To this session, I would like to express my appreciation. Thank you all for coming in and sharing in what I have to offer. Now, what I have to offer has been largely repeated and mentioned and explained by the people who have presented before me. So, at the risk of boring you, I would like to introduce you to my world, some of the things that happen in my organization, some of the things that I like to do, some of the good, the bad, the ugly that has happened. You might be treated to, maybe some yelling and screaming, flinging of arms, maybe some tearing of hair. So bear with me while we go along. I'm going to be talking about the superb office standards for BIM projects. This presentation was prepared with the collaboration of my esteemed colleague, Noman Maisorwala, who unfortunately has not been able to join us today. Therefore, this material is totally at my mercy. So this presentation is the result of a lot of late night Zoom calls, at the end of which my two big, strong German shepherds would be hiding under the bed. You could hear Noman's wife at the other end of the call going, sweetheart, maybe you ought to be nice. So I am the BIM manager of a firm called Fishbeck. We are based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we do everything. We do MEP, we do structures, we do wastewater management, a very, very interesting field. Noman is with Gannett Fleming as a BIM manager. Now, what we see over here, the objectives that were mentioned in my proposal for this session. But you know what? I went ahead and I reworded them. I never like to let things stay the way they are. So what I'm going to talk about is a line of thought. The main overlying reason for us is to make it easier for the team to work. So we need to make sure that the client gets what they want. We need to make sure that we give our team the environment and the tools to make it happen as easily as possible. So this takes me back to Autodesk University 2019, where there was a wonderful session called Revit Standards. We don't need no stinking standards. Well, guess what? We all do. Because consistency lowers risk. All right, so let's take a look at some of the things that we need to do to ensure consistency. Report code compliance. Now, we are complying with classification systems, we are complying with recognized standards, building codes, which vary depending upon the location and the type of the building that is being constructed. So here we've got all of this reporting. It takes place on the general sheet, and this is many, many levels of reporting. Now, how is it? How is it that we are going to report this? It could be something as simple as dumb text. We could have text, we could put it together as a legend, maybe a schedule, even more, horror of horrors. We could actually have a smart family, a formula-driven family, in which we would add in our numbers, our information, and it would crank out the desired results. Well, guess what? Here is one hurdle that comes in to such a process: the level of complexity. You have got a team which may not be comfortable with taking a more complex approach and would prefer the dumb text. So that is something which you do need to be aware of and to work with. Accessibility, believe it or not, readability in 2D and 3D, accommodating color vision deficiency. All of that is really important for the team members, for the contractors, especially for regulatory authorities. And you know what? This is really important, especially in life safety plans. The state of Michigan now mandates, to the best of my knowledge, that life safety plans do need to be in color. This led to a whole dialogue, as to how is it that we're going to represent our line work, our representation of fire and smoke rating. What kind of symbology is it that we're going to use? Is it going to be smart? Is it going to be formula-driven? Is it just going to be a graphic? What kind of deliverables are there that we are going to set in place? What delivery format are we going to use? What are our title block requirements? how are we going to represent code compliance? Funny story about this graphic. You know what? It claims to be a smart component. It is not. Somebody just used a detail line. And when I found that out, my question was, why was there a detail line used? Why was I not consulted and asked for a smart family? That's something that happens. You know, plain text does come in and make a mess, so as to speak. Now, in addition, we would need to create the proper fire rating graphics. The graphics could be in the form of line work, or we could create some wonderful wall styles which are properly color-coded and do tell the story loud and clear. This is the most clunky solution that I was able to find, you know, creating the line-based family to show fire rating. That is clunky, but again, if that's the way that your organization works, maybe that's the way you're going to work. Crucial items that we're going to report upon. And all of that would be in terms of possibly, we would need to check for clearances. We would need to report these in a manner that is, it could be, it all depends upon the conventions that are being used in your company. So, you know, you need to choose the right tool. For instance, Revit's Path of Travel tool. There was a time when we would not adopt it because it did not look the way that our company standards mandate, that a path of egress needs to be represented on a plan. We use a railing, believe it or not. We used a railing, it looked beautiful. It did whatever we wanted. Now we have decided to compromise, even though the Path of Travel tool does give us a product that looks kind of sort of different, but it works quickly, it works efficiently, so we are now switching over to that. So fire rating can be represented by different kinds of filters, wall types, detail items. We do need to recognize the limitations of the type of tools that are available to us. So we would need to function with BIM standards to coordinate different BIM practices to make the process more efficient to implement on projects. Also to ensure that owners and team members receive the information that they need for better performance. Let's take a look at some overriding standards. We do have the NBS BIM Object Standard, which has its own plugin, and that plugin works for Revit, ArchiCAD, and Vectorworks. Goes over Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And then we have the National BIM Standard in the United States, which is still a work in progress. I will not say anything further about that. So we would need to function with our organizational standards. What parameters are we going to use? What elements need to be schedulable? What components need to be taggable? And then we've got owner standards. Again, custom parameters would kick in, what level of detail is required, what manufacturers are going to be involved, and finally, what any project lifecycle requirements. And yes, I am rushing. So for example, for the clients, as an example, let me talk about the city of Grand Rapids, which is where I am based. The city of Grand Rapids has their own specific title block. We have to use that. They have their specific standards for view titles. Their view title needs a bar scale. The rest of us, we don't use bar scales. Bar scales are notoriously clunky. You can create a formula-driven bar scale, but that it isn't smart enough to talk to the view and regurgitate the proper scale factor. But hey, guess what? The owner wants it, we use it. We use the font that they require. We do everything, we jump through hoops to do everything that they want. For authoring, you know, at the other end, at our end, things are pretty similar. So, for instance, for consultants, stakeholders, what kind of software are they using? Does their software talk to ours? Oh, believe me, that brings about a whole bunch of, that opens up a whole kettle of worms, so as to speak. I may have the expression wrong. So, in a previous life, a structural consultant was using a software that I will not mention, whose name I will not mention. Guess what? When their model was brought into my model, you could not see the structure correctly at all. Detailing was impossible, took up a whole lot of time. As a result, the structural consultant was told to remodel in a corresponding software to ours, and then only would we proceed, would we allow them to continue as a consultant. Similarly, for cloud shared projects, who's hosting? How are they hosting? How is it that the consultants are going to be allowed to access our information and bring in their own information? Now, to go behind the scenes, some things that I would recommend. If you are not using Storage Sense, please do so. Now you can relocate the desktop connector cache. And the most exciting piece of news is that with 2024, you can relocate the collaboration cache. This is huge. This is absolutely awesome. The INI file. Now, the only time, rather, when I really spend a lot of time with the IT guys is when we're all set to deploy and upgrade to the latest version of Revit. They want me to go in, make sure that everything that needs to be visible and usable in Revit is visible and usable, and thus they will generate the INI file, which is pushed out to everybody. So this is generally customized at the time of deployment. This can help you to control the reminders that are being shown, any error messages that come up. The parameter service is something that I was really excited about because I always forget where my shared parameters file is, and nobody else has access to it. So heaven help me if nobody's able to find that. So now you can set up your shared parameters in the parameter service. Normally, it would be a text file in a central location, but now with this in the cloud, this can be enabled or disabled through the INI file. There's a whole lot of discussion going on about access levels, levels of control in the parameter service. Does it stay with the account administrators, or would there be any levels of permissions to access the parameter service? If you look at the Autodesk Revit forum, there's a whole discussion going on with this. And no, it isn't coming soon. It's already here. How are you going to set up your project in the cloud? What kind of a project template are you going to set up in the cloud? As long as you remember that the account admin is different from the project admin, you should be good. So you should have a template, you should have your standard team preloaded, and you should assign permissions. You have a folder structure with permissions. Other templates that you can create in the cloud, you've got issue customization. You can set up report templates. You can set up an auto-publishing setup for design collaboration. For model coordination, make sure to pick the right tool. You could use ACC. You could use something as simple as Revit interference check. I mean, you could just cut a whole bunch of sections through Revit just to make sure that clashes are not taking place. You could use clash detection in Navis. You could use Dynamo, Solibri, and there's a whole lot of other tools that are available. Just find the tool that works the best for you. You can do automatic clash detection in the cloud, for which the models need to be published and packaged with dedicated views created for you. You need to configure your Windows themes, make sure that everything is visible to your team so that they can work easily. You can customize options in Revit, again, just to make sure that what is required is visible. And these are some of my favorites, which I always make sure are done. And my final tip, to see clearly, use PyRevit, color code all the tabs, make sure you have keyboard shortcuts, and you know what, I'm out of time. So, I'm out of time. So, I mean, for further details, feel free to touch base.